The Intellectual Gentlemen's Club.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are back at the IGC podcast. I want to say thank you, everybody, again, for sharing the word around, subscribing on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, wherever you may find us out there, and Facebook, Twitter, the whole works. We're on Facebook /Intellectual Gentlemen's Club, and you can find us on Twitter at IGCcast. Tonight, I have the magnificent Matthew Abbott back, my brother.
Hi.
Yeah, it's been a while since you've been back, so thanks for being here, Matt. Everybody out there, we might have some technical problems tonight. We have a three-way Skype call, and connections seem to be all over the place. Yeah, three-way, that's the hot word for the tonight. Yeah. Our guest tonight is a mysterious cat. He's going to go by MLP, and he works in the electronic music industry. His day job is in information security, and he is a self-described liberty enthusiast. Welcome, Mr. MLP. How are you?
Welcome. All right. How you doing?
Good, man. All right, well, we're just going to kind of wing this one tonight, and more or less, I wanted to talk about what the fuck is going on lately with our constitutional rights and the whole NSA thing, and, you know, the whole spy game and everything like that. Today I put out on Facebook, it's a meme that I've seen going around, and it basically is saying that if we all email the Constitution to each other, the NSA will finally read it. So, yeah, on there, it's amazing to me because Nixon wiretapped one room with Watergate, we saw impeachment proceedings, but the NSA is wiretapping and following every American citizen out there, and it's just business as usual. So I'm pretty sure.
I mean,
go ahead.
If you've been following, you know, this type of shit for any amount of time, you'll notice that Mark Klein actually blew the whistle on the NSA's interception of the fiber optic communications. Specifically, he had several peering points in the North American and global backbone. Back in like 2003, there was a Wired article published where, I mean, this is coming from the guy in AT&T's back end that actually installed the shit. It's pictures and documented it all. And he put it out there back in like 03, 04. And I mean, yeah, people that work in my circles were like, oh, holy shit, like it's finally confirmed, you know? But everybody else, you know, all the common people that don't really understand how this shit works, like, they're just still oblivious. And they don't really realize, like, how much of a scope and a grasp they have on your day-to-day communications.
So why don't you break it down for us, dude? So you see this every day. Obviously, you're talking about 10 years ago. You saw the whistle being blown. Obviously, we've got Edward Snowden.
Well, have you seen the TAO catalog? There's a document that was, like, I've got all this shit. I can give you copies, but there's a document out there that basically is the catalog of all the fun shit that NSA gets to play with and that NSA has built for doing all these little black box jobs. And they sell this technology to friendly or quasi-friendly foreign governments and nation states. Like, if you want to, you know, do some of the shit that they have access to doing, you can pay for that access, you know, if you're, like, friendly with the U.S. And you can play with their toys too, but it costs an obnoxious amount of money. And, you know, they might even backdoor the backdoor that they sell you so that they can backdoor you. But this is the catalog that Snowden leaked, originally was, I think, 2008, 2009 technology. And all those technologies, like, we had theorized and, like, done proof of concepts of, you know, in the underground scene. But they just took it to a much, much more miniaturized and weaponized format. This is all like concepts and technologies that we've been talking about for years, but they actually went ahead and built it and implemented it. And apparently they're making a lot of money selling it all around the world to spy on you and me.
So let me ask you, I've heard about these data centers that are popping up, like in Utah, these buildings, these gigantic buildings that they're building basically to house all the information as far as text messages, phone calls, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever anything you're doing with technology is almost stored in a database.
Yeah,
What's that?
Well, you have to consider, like, if you really understand, you have to consider that if you really understand the way the internet works, that it's a loosely associated web of other webs. If you look at like the actual protocols that govern the way our computers communicate with each other, in between your computer and whatever website you're going to, or however you're using the internet, there's going to be, about a dozen hops in between. And at any one of those intermediate points, somebody can be sniffing your traffic or injecting traffic. But that's the fabric of the internet. That's just the way everything works on a protocol level. So the key point to take away here is, if you want to be completely safe, or if you want to be as safe as you possibly can be against institutional surveillance, you basically have to own the chain of encryption from endpoint to endpoint. Physically exchange keys. Don't rely on key exchange protocols, stuff like that.
So how do you go about owning something like that? I mean,
you build or write it yourself.
Interesting.
I mean, here's the thing, right? You can pontificate about the open source movement and Linux and BSD and all these wonderful alternative operating systems that are opening up computer hardware and software to so many people with, not limited by formal education or training. But it all comes down to the fact that all a computer really is just a really huge, really fast abacus. It performs a lot of very, very low-level mathematical operations very quickly. That's all it does. That's all it's designed to do. So you have to look at layers of abstraction of the code that you run on this big-ass abacus. Do you trust your operating system? If not, you need the operating system to operate a computer, so how do you obtain or write an operating system that you can trust? How do you manage ways of getting data into and out of the system?
Well, I'm sure that
how can you trust the conveyance of that data? These are all very, very important problems that most people just kind of take for granted and don't assume are even problems.
So let's take operating.
And that's what facilitates the entire surveillance of everybody as a whole.
So let's take operating systems. You have Windows, Linux, Unix, Mac. Whatever's going on out there. Do you think well, I'm sure what is written in those operating systems? Does it make it easier for government entities or hackers to, grab whatever they want out of the air, or is it more secured?
I have a saying that I like to live by, with, regarding computers and stuff. Let's say you have like a system or a network or some instance of something that I'm trying to get into. Out of 2,000 or 3,000 potential ways you could break into this thing, I might know personally 1,000 of them. I only need one of them to work.
Right.
Only one of them has to succeed. And if you consider the overall complexity of, the code base or the source code base of any commercial piece of software, any operating system, it's just so vast that no one person can have, complete oversight of the entire base of code. Nobody can audit all of that himself. But you have teams, and you have tools and repositories and stuff you can work with. There are groups of people auditing, modules of code. But even then, the person's still the weakest link. The FBI just, they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar a few years ago, trying to deliberately weaken an encryption algorithm in OpenBSD. Basically, the FBI paid some open source developers to deliberately weaken the mathematical encryption algorithm they were using for IPsec in one of the versions of OpenBSD operating system. And this is supposed to be the security vetted operating system in the open source arena.
So how can
because it ended up being a shitty encryption standard and nobody ended up using it anyway. But
so how can one internet user find a safe method of keeping their shit in check? Is that even possible at this point? I know that people used to be able to live off the grid.
It's possible, but it's really difficult. I mean,
you gotta know what you're doing, right?
I mean, like, you're not going to be using Google. You're not going to be using Facebook. You're not going to be, using a cell phone.
What about stuff like Hotspot Shield and stuff like that? Does that help?
All you're really doing with stuff like that is providing yourself a base level of quasi-anonymity through obfuscation and dilution. It's like steganography. Are you guys familiar with steganography at all?
No, why don't you enlighten us, please?
Basically, you're hiding stuff that you don't want people to see in plain sight.
Okay.
By slightly adjusting differences or deltas of all the other stuff around you. So, let's say you have like an image, like a JPEG, some random bitmap image of like a baseball or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the palette, basically like the color table for that image, you could take that image and then make a copy of it side by side, right? And you could flip, the RGB color values, for example, of individual pixels, like every 8th pixel in that image. So let's say there's a few 100,000 pixels in that photographic image. You're only modifying the shade of one out of every, 10 of them, just by like 1 or 2 values. That's enough to encode other information in those differences. And when you put the 2 copies of that same photo side by side, your eye could tell the difference. The computer might be able to, but it's a way of hiding information within other innocuous information.
That's some crazy shit, man.
That's effectively what Tor tries to do, like with your actual network connection. You bounce into Tor, it bounces it around 3 hops all over the world, and then out some unknown exit point.
So it can't trace your IP address?
So nobody would ever...
So it can't trace your IP?
Well, it can only trace you back to the endpoint. Then wherever you came from before the endpoint is, lost in Tor somewhere. But the problem with that is you can do side channel attacks. Like I can make your browser talk to another computer outside of Tor and then find out where you are, like completely bypassing the Tor network, like through a side channel. Yeah, Tor is not good safe.
So all this information that is able to be collected from the average internet user is obviously you don't have a man in a black hood working for the NSA monitoring every single email, text message, and communication form that's passed on the internet.
No, but
this is it stored in a database.
If you have all of them from today, right? Let's say you get every email that was sent on the internet today, right? Mm-hmm. You have them all in one big zip file or database or whatever. 2 years from now, there may be somebody who wants to know, did some random person send this other random person an email on this day, 2 years ago? Now they can go back and they have a record of that.
So if you're labeled a terrorist,
piece of information going from spot A to spot B, and they can extrapolate whatever they want off of that. They can say, hey, you talked to this guy 2 years ago.
So all they have to do is basically, if the FBI is under an investigation with somebody, and let's say they pull up Jason Abbott, myself, right? They see that I was talking with somebody on a podcast, right? And then they pull up my information and say, okay, we're going to look at what this guy's done over the years. They can backtrack however long they want.
Not even that. Not even that. They could even go and look at the server that you're serving this podcast from. And they can pull the IP addresses of every person that's ever downloaded it. They can look at those IP addresses, cross-correlate them to physical addresses. The amount of analysis and cross-correlational data that's available from, big data modeling is just staggering. I mean, people really are, they really can be manipulated predictably.
That's incredible.
What I don't understand.
I mean, social conditioning is like, it's a finite science, man.
What I don't understand is, if you have every phone that's being tracked, every computer is being tracked, for the purpose of fighting crime in the general sense, you would think that there would be hardly any kidnappings, all the murders would be solved. I mean, you'd think they would just be able to solve crime left and right with this.
You're thinking of Minority Report.
Pre-con.
I mean, we're just not that far along yet.
Do you think it's getting to that point where they would be able to initiate some kind of program?
I was
I mean, aren't they still issuing, arrest warrants for every black baby that's born now? Like, is that still happening?
Oh God. Oh man.
I mean, we're already kind of halfway there, like it just happens to be for a slightly different reason.
Wow. So, what can the average person do to protect themselves from if they don't want to be found? Is there any
move to the mountains?
Move to the mountains and get off the fucking internet, right?
Get a goat, just move.
But
to
I mean,
the
that doesn't even work. That doesn't even work too, because if you end up going all Kaczynski and shit, you're going to look like an outlier. You're going to be statistically anomalous, and that's going to be a big red warning flag in yourself.
Wow. Yeah.
Anybody who knows anything about doing actual dirt knows that you just want to blend in. You want to. The only way you can be truly anonymous is to be indistinguishable. That is, not able to be explicitly identified.
All right, so you brought up this word anonymous. So, what do you know about the anonymous group out there? I mean, is this something?
I really don't. I don't want to talk about. That's like it's fucking prison politics, man. Like those ankle biters. Let me put it this way, right? You can take 800 monkeys and put them in front of 800 typewriters in 800 million years. One of them will eventually bang out the entire works of Shakespeare, right?
Right.
Anonymous is, yeah, well, not so much. I mean, they're a bunch of, teenage angst-filled internet miscreant ankle biters that, don't really know how to code, but they'll gladly run whatever code you give them. They're a slightly misdirected youth political movement, I guess you could say.
What would you think that would be an ideal thing for Anonymous to be doing, other than just running these random codes that you're talking about?
I don't know, man. Go back to listening to shitty indie music, like quit cluttering up the internet with fucking pointless humor that isn't really funny.
Do you think that they're doing anything? Do you think that
you really can't talk too much? You can't really talk too much shit about Anonymous, though, because they do have a few guys in their ranks that actually do know some shit, and they have a vicious sense of humor. The internet hate machine is running pretty strong enough. I don't know, man.
Who's
try to steer clear of those guys.
What about the Syrian Electronic Army or whatever those guys are? What do you know about them?
I mean,
they pulled some pretty crazy
nothing
shit.
that they're doing is particularly skilled. Nothing that any of these the people that do shit publicly that you actually hear and see about is pretty much the bottom of the barrel. Like, it's not the 90s anymore, Like, in as much as hacking into NASA.gov is still like a teenage rite of passage for some groups of people, like, it's still not, a technical feat par excellence.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the real deal doing then?
Well, I mean, I don't really think I would want to discuss that on a public podcast.
You can give us an example of something. No, you can give I'm not talking about you in particular. I'm just saying you can give an example.
Well, I mean, I had this friend in San Francisco that was supposed to give a pretty amazing presentation on pacemakers, like hacking wireless pacemakers over Bluetooth. And he actually happened to die under quasi-mysterious circumstances like 2 days before the conference last year.
Yeah, I remember reading about that.
Yeah, it's my buddy Barnes. Kind of weird how that all worked out.
So, like, outside of Anonymous, you have, if you're considering them a juvenile group, basically, the heavy hitters out there that really do know what they're doing, I'm sure that you're not going to see that shit on, like, the main news. You're not going to see it on CNN about something major that happened. What kind of effects are people like that having on the system?
Well,
in general, nothing specific.
at a former employer about 3 years ago, I used to work with a guy who is ex-Navy. He was on nuclear subs doing communications and signal intelligence work. He used to work for the NSA for a few years, also doing signals intelligence. And basically there's an access group at the NSA. There's groups within the government that actually carry out the work, you know, the cyber grunts, if you will, you know, the guys actually performing attacks across the internet. Even they don't actually write the tools. The real guys are in a room with no windows somewhere writing tools for lots and lots and lots of money. And those tools do very amazing things. You know, like the soldier on the front line doesn't design and mill and spec out and build the rifle that he carries to shoot somebody with.
Sure.
He's just using a tool.
Sure.
You know? It takes a very, very skilled person and a lot of creative design work to make tools that can creatively accomplish these, you know, large tasks, like killing a lot of people really efficiently, or, you know, breaking into esoteric and arcane computer networks. Those people are generally a lot more protected than just the grunts actually digging trenches, so to speak.
It's some scary shit, man. I mean, when you start to dig into what's out there, you go down this rabbit hole. There's a lot of different issues that, you know, some we've tackled on the podcast, some I plan on attacking in the future here. But every time I start to do some research on a topic that I want to, you know, do a podcast on or whatever, it leads me down this rabbit hole, whether you're talking about psychedelics, whether you're talking about, you know, the NSA or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how much do you trust your senses, you know?
Well,
with what we know about the way the brain works, I don't really trust much of anything anymore.
Yeah, I can.
We're getting to the point where we can map out, you know, behaviors and thought patterns in memory and in execution inside brain tissue with electromagnetic waves and with fucking particle beams and shit. We can control the behavior and implant fake memories in mice right now. Like, they just figured out how to do that a couple months ago. There were not all brains in the jar with wires sticking out, some big vault somewhere, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting thing to contemplate sometimes, I suppose.
So that brings up an interesting segue to, I guess, artificial intelligence. Do you think that by manipulating, you know, you're talking about these mice, the memories can be manipulated. Do you think that eventually we'll approach what, say, Kurzweil calls the singularity, where...
You know, that's one of the few things that still gives me, you know, boners anymore. Just waiting for that point. Like, I languish in relishment on the day where I can press a button and upload my consciousness to, you know, to the wire. Not have to deal with its flawed physical corporeal existence anymore.
So wouldn't you think, though, if we get to that point...
Have you ever seen...
Go ahead. If we ever seen what?
Have you ever seen the William Gibson? There's a William Gibson episode, directed and written episode of the X-Files. I think it was season 5, episode 11.
It's
you might want to watch
that. It's been a long time, yeah.
What is it?
You going back?
Season 5, episode 11.
Season 5, episode 11. It was a William Gibson episode of the X-Files. I can send you a rip if you need it.
So what did it discuss, basically?
Yeah, no, might want to leave that part out, though.
What was the gist of the episode?
Yeah, I think I gave you that last time I was down.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a rogue AI that this guy wrote, and it gets out, it gets loose on the internet, and it starts fucking trying to whack people, but it starts doing it in creative and interesting ways, like, you know, manipulating the telecommunications network to direct all these drug dealers into the same shitty diner at the same time. So there's a firefight that breaks out and ends up killing the guy with a straight bullet, you know, stuff like that.
That's an interesting concept. If we're able to upload our consciousness to a separate body or some type of, you know, computer intelligence, wouldn't we necessarily need to be connected to, say, the internet or whatever kind of advancement we have at that point? Wouldn't they, or I keep saying they, but wouldn't the powers that be have control over, you know, understanding what's going through your head, what makes you tick, or?
Well, I mean, that all depends on how open you decide to build the architecture that holds this whole thing. I mean, we're running into that problem with sciences and academia right now, where Just take Apple for example. I mean, the App Store, they put up this big walled garden. It's really wonderful inside those walls. But if you want to enjoy all the pleasures and play with all the toys and eat all the nice fruit, you got to do it within those restrictions.
Right.
You know, like Apple doesn't like it when you run whatever code you fucking want to run on your iPhone.
That's why
they designed the iPhone to have, for you to have a specific user experience in mind, and anything that deviates from that user experience that they want you to have is the only way to experience this hardware. You know, you got to play by the rules and not play at all. Fuck that.
But on the other hand, you have open source like Google, but they're doing the same things that you were saying earlier, right?
Yeah, but there's no fucking Google phone on the market ever that matches Apple's ergonomics and integration.
Right. I mean, I love my iPhone. I love
Nobody
my iPad.
builds a better physical phone than Apple right now.
Yeah. I don't have any experience
and
with anything other than the iPhone.
Most people don't even realize that by signing up to use, everybody loves, the benefits of the walled garden, but they don't realize how much liberty they actually give up
and how much tyranny they actually allow themselves to be subjected to just to live within those walls and experience those pleasures.
So what's the
I
solution?
mean, Google's not immune to it either. Like, the problem is that the outerlying government regulation is basically mandated that if you want to use an electronic device to communicate in this world, you have to be subject to surveillance and oversight. And personally, I think that's a load of bullshit.
Yeah, I agree. What's the solution then?
Like I said before, the solution is owning the encryption chain from end to end. Okay? If I build my own phone out of a computer and a radio transmitter, and I build two of them, and I specify the encryption keying and protocols that are going to be in use for those two devices to communicate, and I physically key them with the same pre-shared key in the same physical space at the same time, and I don't provide a mechanism for that key to be changed over the air, then I have two secure devices that can communicate. And as long as the underlying encryption algorithm isn't, pre-computed or isn't weakened, those devices should be able to securely communicate.
But you're talking about two specific devices, and
yeah,
how
so you
would
have
that
to build
communicate with
yourself.
anybody else? But would you be able to communicate with anybody else other than on those two units?
No, not securely.
Yeah.
Unless those other devices also supported the same encryption and key exchange.
So that helps if you want to have a private conversation with one person, I guess. But if you want to communicate with the rest of the world, you're kind of shit out of luck at that point, right?
The rest of the world also has to be on the same platform.
Right.
The platform that we currently use to communicate, i.e. the Global Telecommunications Network and Internet, it's very useful and very universal. It's very ubiquitous. Everybody already uses it. That's why it's so useful. It's not very secure. It is not very secure at all.
What do you
If
think
you
about
want
the whole
something that is
Bitcoin
secure,
thing?
it's going to have limited use. It's a fun experiment.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
like sending other people's Bitcoin.
and it's so safe because it's encrypted so well. Or I'm still a bit confused on the whole Bitcoin.
No. I mean, if you got to go back and read Satoshi's original paper that outlined the whole Bitcoin thing as a proof of concept. Because I'm willing to bet that you don't actually understand how Bitcoin works, like as a low-level protocol. But if you go back and read the actual paper that started it all, and have a good understanding of how the physical protocol works from the blockchain level, I think you'll understand a little bit better why it's so important, why it's so powerful. Unfortunately, it would probably take me like 3 hours to explain all this shit to you.
I probably wouldn't understand most of it anyway.
Really.
You have a
Well, it's
Bitcoin
basically
for dummies,
asymmetric. It's asymmetric encryption. Okay, if I take A and B and encrypt it with C, C is going to be a split key. I'm not even going to go into it.
Yeah, don't fry my brain,
This to somebody
Mr.
right now.
MLP. You're going to fry my brain.
That's the trick. I have to get more high right now. That is the trick. Hang on.
People, we do not confirm nor deny any use of illegal chemicals or substances on this podcast.
We don't even know who this guy is we're talking to right now.
Yep. I'm sure nothing's going on at your place either, Matt, right?
No, nothing at all. Nothing at all.
Nor over here. It's just all alleged. You hear that, NSA? It's all alleged.
Yes.
All right, so
when in doubt, simple open, right?
So you're bringing up, we're talking about Bitcoin a little bit. I know
Yeah,
that a lot of different websites are now accepting that. And how secure is that? Like you hear about like the Silk Road, right? This is supposed to be this underground, place to get whatever you want, whether it's, drugs or black market, whatever. And that crashed too. But from what I've heard on some chatter is just that they were just not being careful enough. But can you
Well, there's another one that went right up afterwards.
Sure, and that's going to happen, and I believe it's up again to some degree. But is there any way that these people can prevent that without, starting up their own island, basically?
Excuse me. Well, that's the whole point, man. You need to set up your own island, and only when you set up your own island do you get to decide who comes on and who stays off, and who can't even see where you're at.
So how much education?
That's the wonder of the internet.
Right. So when you set up your own island, how much education and knowledge does one need to set up their own island? Because the shit that's going on in your brain, half of it I'm not even understanding right now, of course.
Right. See, that's the problem, man.
How much time did you have to put in to be able to establish your knowledge base?
Oh, dude, I mean, I love this shit. Like, it's like any other mastered craft,
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the syntax and the semantics, but also the creative applications by which you apply them. Anybody can play fucking shit they read on a staff and then notation staff on the piano or the violin, but it takes a real virtuoso to make you feel what the original composer meant to make you feel when he wrote the shit,
Right.
Like, it's, I've dodged multiple federal cases, like I've had friends who've had books written about them being on the run and shit in the 80s and 90s. Like, it's fucking crazy. It's not just something you pick up, Like,
right.
It's
a
not
craft.
just about computers either. Like, it's not about computers and networks or phones or any of that shit. It's
lifestyle.
It's a mindset of wanting to find creatively rebellious solutions to interesting and difficult problems. Like, it's going about things not by the book.
Would you call it civil disobedience?
Civil disobedience, social engineering, active, like it's all fucking bullshit, man. I don't let the rules that they've outlined for, the system to work, and I want to play it on my own. I think it can work better that way. So that's the way I live. If you don't like it, go fuck yourself.
True that.
I'll see you when I see you, but probably not if I see you first, because I have a better scope.
Gotcha.
It's like I don't know, man. Like there's only two things that I could really vote with anymore. It's money and bullets. So useful because many flaws could potentially enable you to implement something that Jim Bell theorized in his paper about anonymous, decentralized, double-blind assassination markets. Somebody somewhere is going to put up a list of people, and on that list of people is basically that's a list of people that the people participating have decided it would be a good idea if they weren't around anymore. And once you have an anonymous digital form of cash and an anonymous way to communicate peer-to-peer, you can put up something like an assassination market double blind, in that you have a list of people that you want killed, you have a bounty list on their heads, and you have a fully anonymous way of communicating this list and those values and of receiving and collecting those bounties. And the basic premise of it is that you encrypt a date of death for one of the members on the list into a message that you send into the Bitcoin blockchain. And after the person's body ends up, you find out what date they were discovered on or what date they died on. The person who posted the update to the blockchain with the comment field that matches that date or that time or that method or whatever identifying factor you may use when you're making the original posting for the person to be assassinated, they match that criteria and you get the reward in Bitcoin.
So this
So what you end up with,
at that point, the Bitcoin, it can't be traced, and everybody gets away scot-free. Is that how it's supposed to work, right?
I mean, what if there was a way that you could post a list somewhere publicly that everybody could see with a list of names on it, and if you killed one of those people, you would get a duffel bag full of cash on your doorstep the next morning, no questions asked, nobody knows, right?
Okay.
Let's see if you can make that happen.
I lost you for a minute.
That would be a very piss somebody off, or they did something that they know enough people are going to be pissed off enough about to try to collect that reward money to make the person dead. You know, do we work for the government, or does the government work for us?
Well, obviously,
that's the question you really should be asking.
Right. They're supposed to work for us, obviously, but I mean, it seems like, you know, over time here, and it seems like it's advancing.
Well, what other oversight do we really have?
What, voting? Yeah, that doesn't really.
Voting doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work.
Lobbying only works if you have enough money.
To buy
and if you have enough money to lobby, you effectively have the government in your pocket anyway.
Sure. It's legalized bribery.
Where is the representation for the common man who doesn't want to play that fucking game?
Yeah, it's a tricky time as far as that's concerned. You have Republicans, you have Democrats, and
they're both two sides of the same coin. You know,
exactly, yeah.
It's a dog and pony show specifically designed to wrest the common man's attention away from realizing the fact that the same dude behind the curtain has his hand up both of those puppet passes, giving you a fucking terrific show.
So who is the dude that has his hands in everything?
There's about 40 or 50 families at the top of the global economic pyramid.
And they kind of call the shots, man. And they're talking about the Bilderbergs, the Morgans, the Rothschilds, you know, those type of the Bohemian Grove motherfuckers.
Right.
Those are the guys really calling the shots.
Matt, I thought you called the shots.
I try. No one listens to me, though.
You still owe me money if you're a lawyer, motherfucker.
I know.
What happened with that case anyway, man? Are you free and clear, or are you going to jail, or what?
No, everything got dismissed because the prosecutor didn't show up after 2 years.
No fucking way. That's awesome.
No.
Matt, you skated away again.
Yeah.
Barely. Only took 2 years.
So you guys are both.
It's not as good as Sneak DUI, man. Sneak DUI case was great. Like we all use the same lawyer. A little bit of context. We all use the same lawyer that Matt had to use for this bullshit ring ticket a while ago. And a buddy of mine got a DUI doing some stupid shit. And our mutual lawyer friend basically ended up postponing or adjourning the case so many times that the cop who arrested him ended up shooting his wife and himself. And they had to dismiss the case because the arresting officer couldn't testify.
Mother of God.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah, we actually threw a party to celebrate that guy. I pulled the murder-suicide. It was pretty good.
A murder-suicide party. Sounds pretty dark.
No, murder-suicide to get me off of a DUI party.
Yeah. He wasn't exactly happy about the death and the murder. It's more of him getting off with the DUI.
Yeah, understood.
No, we're pretty happy about that.
Oh shit! Well,
I mean, no such thing as a good one, right?
So you guys are both in the electronic music industry, or the music scene here. Matt, you just got back from a gig in Chicago. How'd that go out there?
It was good. It was actually, I played in Chicago probably about, 15 times, and every time something shit has happened, some drama, but last weekend was really good, actually. Had a lot of fun.
So for you that are tuning in for the first time, Matt also goes by Secrets. That's his music name. When you see flyers popping around on Facebook or whatever, that's who you're listening to. He does our intro music. A lot of times it's played on the exit as well. So You got any new tracks that are coming up? Anything you're about to release that's new, or you just concentrate on playing live?
Yep, I got some stuff coming up on a label called Yo Sucka, and it's some sludge music that I'm doing some designing for too for the label. And then I'll be West Coast in February from San Diego up to Seattle for a couple weeks. So
getting out of the cold.
That's what's new. Yeah, I'm trying, man. Knowing me, I'll go over to the West Coast and it'll be 8 degrees over there too.
I think the polar vortex is going to follow you wherever you go.
Yeah.
It's like the cloud over your head, bro.
Center of the vortex.
Polar Vortex 2014.
Yeah, the polar vortex apocalypse.
They're calling it Polar Vortex 3.
Yeah, my kids have been off school, man, 5 times in January. And it hasn't been for snow. It's only been for cold. I can't remember one day when I was a kid that we didn't go to school for frozen weather. You know, I understand.
They canceled all the buses back from Chicago because of the cold.
Yeah, you had to take a train back, you were saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, does the train freeze up?
I don't know. It took us 8 hours. It was supposed to be a 5-hour train ride, and it took us 8 hours, so yeah.
Shit. Well, Mr. MLP, what kind of music do you produce?
I don't really want to talk about my musical pursuits per se. I think that might be a little too identifying.
This motherfucker wants to stay off the grid, y'all. It's all good, man. It's all good.
Dude, when you've seen the shit that I've seen, and Matt's seen like a small amount of it hanging out with me on several occasions, like I can't.
You just don't live in the same world as most people, do you?
You know, like what is you've been behind bars, you've been in a fucking cell, dude. You should know, like, what is your freedom worth to you? You know, like how closely and how carefully do you want to guard that?
Yeah.
And because of the things that I know and the things that I've done and I've seen, I have to fucking evaluate that criteria at a considerably different level than most people you would realize, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure you view from different goggles for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, man, and dropping the knowledge that you did. You kind of blew my top. I know that
for
there's
sure, man.
I know there's a lot
I'll
of
send
shit
you some
out there.
information shortly.
Yeah, do that. I'll post it up on our Facebook page and send it out to the peeps. I'll throw it up on Twitter and stuff. So if you guys are interested, you know, follow us on there, and you get some tidbits of information on there. You guys got
good, man.
You guys, well, Mr. MLP, I know that you're not going to want to talk us about any upcoming projects you have, but Matt, what do you got on the horizon?
Just the West Coast tour coming up, and staying out of trouble. That's what I got coming up.
That's a good plan, dude. It's a good plan.
Pay me back, motherfucker.
And paying him back, yes.
You gotta make them gigs, make that money, and get it out to MLP.
I know, man.
Yeah.
Cool, guys. Well,
All right, Holmes.
if you want to find Matt, you can find him on Facebook. You can find him through Secrets or him personally. Matt, you do Twitter at all?
No, I tried. It just was boring to me.
Yeah. So he's a Secret Stream Wolf, I believe, on Twitter. If you want to find him on there.
I'm on Twitter and Facebook, but you're not gonna find me.
Yeah. I can. I'm sure that. I'm sure you'll be sure of that. All right, guys. Well, if you want to check out more of our podcast, we've got a variety of topics on there. This is probably number 24, if I'm not mistaken. You can find us on iTunes. You can find us on Stitcher, YouTube. None of those are secured networks. Rate us and review us.
We're all gonna die.
Yeah, we're all doomed. Follow us on Twitter at IGCcast. You can find us on Facebook, like I said in the beginning. We have a support page on the website, intellectualgentlemensclub.com/support. On there, you can find our donate button, our ads for Amazon on it, and audible.com. You get some goodies on there. If you subscribe and do whatever you do through there, we get a little bit of a cut, helps cover the hosting fees on our hosting account, which is also not secured, apparently. And our Secrets is going to be taking us out again. All right, guys, it's been real.
turn it all off and go home.
Yeah, exactly. Appreciate both your time again. Matt, thanks for coming back on.
No problem. Thanks, MLP, whatever.
MLP.
MLP.
All right, guys, hang loose out there.
All right, bye.
See you guys.
Bye.
Sit down.
Seriously? You're still listening? Well, why don't you download all the podcasts? www.intellectualgentlemansclub.com, iTunes, Stitcher, the whole works. Go get the rest of them. Later.
I never said I was a gentleman, motherfuckers.